watching Rogers TV Brampton.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would ask you all to rise. Mayor Fennell is going to recite the prayer.
Grant us, O God, perception and patience that justice, truth, and honesty may be evident on our planning and governing. Make us aware of the needs of each part of this regional municipality. Save us from a parochialism that divides, and so create in us a desire for progress and responsible action. We pray that all our words and deeds may be in accord with thy will, to the glory of thy holy name. Amen.
Amen. Roll call. All members of council are present except Councillor Mahoney, who's away on a personal matter, and Councillor Toby's away on vacation, and Councillor Yanika is absent at this point in time. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest by anybody on the agenda today? Okay. Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, Mr. Chair. PWB2, as my family owns property in the area.
Okay, PW would staff so mark that. Okay. Mayor McCallion? Yeah. Yes, conflict of interest. Are there any? You have to put your mic on, Mayor McCallion, so they put your mic on. So they
Oh,
can
sorry. I declare a conflict of interest on the item E of the delegations and the report regarding legal fees.
Okay. Are there any other conflicts? If not, moving on to approval of the minutes, could I have a motion for the January 23rd, 2014 Regional Council meeting? Thompson and Starr. Okay. That the minutes of the Regional Council meeting held on January the 23rd, 2014 be approved. Are there any questions or errors or admissions? If not, all of those in favor? Anybody voting today? All those in favor? Carried. Our first delegation. Oh, sorry. Oh. Could we put this on the screen? I have before me that the agenda for February 13, 2014 Regional Council meeting included additional communication from Emerald Cove Regional Chair, Region Appeal responding to Mr. Joe Grogan, resident of the Town of Caledon, regarding the Town of Caledon application for boundary change and the Ontario Municipal Board to be listed under items related to Public Works item PWD 3, and further that the agenda of February 13, 2014 Regional Council meeting include additional communication from Casual Brock Lawyers on behalf of Brampton Area 52-53 landowner groups to be dealt with under the item relating to Public Works item PWD 4, and further that the agenda of February 13, 2014 Regional Council meeting include an additional communication from Harvey S. Dorsey, solicitor on behalf of the Pacific Paving Limited, to be dealt with under item relating to Public Works PW5, and further that the agenda for February 13th, 2014 Regional Council be approved as amended. Would someone like to move and second that? Okay. Mayor Fennell and Susan McFadden. All those in favor? Opposed, anybody? Motion's carried. Our first item delegation then is here, and I would ask Jeffrey Quinn to come forward, who is the Senior Manager and Chair. I'd like to make a few comments about the delegation this morning. It's about the Region Appeal being recognized as a leader in sustainable commuting. In November the 7th Annual Smart Commute Award took place in Toronto. This award recognizes the workplace for their outstanding efforts in encouraging employees to walk, to cycle, take transit, carpooling, or telework. The Region of Peel had the honor of receiving this Employment of the Year award. Peel has been a leader in transportation, demanding management for over 10 years and won this award before in 2009. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Our transportation team management worked hard on providing staff with options such as transit, discount, carpooling, biking on Friday to encourage employees not to drive alone to work. I'd like to welcome Mr. Quinn, the board president of the Smart Commute Program, Caledon, who will present the award, and maybe we could have a picture taken afterwards. So I also want to introduce our staff that have worked and have been recognized, working very hard on this, and we have Damien Albanese, who is the Director of Transportation. Would you like to stand up, Damien? And Wayne Chong, Manager of Sustainable Transportation, and Judy Yak, Transportation Manager of Analysis, and a member of the Smart Community Board of Directors. So all of you, I would like to thank you very much. Maybe we could show our appreciation to them. And I'll go back to you, Jeff, and you'd like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Smart Commute Brampton Caledon, it is an honour and a privilege to recognise the Region of Peel as Employer of the Year for 2013. The region is a leader when it comes to sustainable transportation. As representing a private employer, I'm thrilled at the participation that the region and private employers has. As we're very aware these days, transportation is a hot topic. It affects every one of us, and any effort that we can make to reduce emissions, make our commutes easier to get to work, is a bonus for everybody. Our participation rate is the best of any smart commute in the GTHA. I think that's something that council and private employers should be very proud of. We have a very good participation rate and actively enrolling people. Again, I'd like to thank the region for the effort they're making, and it's a thrill to be here. Thank you very much.
Hey, maybe Mayor McCallion?
The thing was on, sorry.
Oh, I see. Oh, you okay? Well, we agreed to take a picture, but I just wondered if you'd like to step aside. There's another presentation we have, and then maybe we could get up and take both pictures at one time. Would that be
Absolutely.
okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So could I just receive them as a presentation? All those in favor? Carried. Our second recognition in leadership and partnership and the teamwork and completing the Mississauga Road Environmental Assessment. I thought we were going to have a picture of this on the board, but I don't see one. On January the 30th, 2014, I attended the Ontario Public Works Association Annual Conference and Award Luncheon. I was proud to see the Region of Peel receive the 2013 OPWA Project of the Year Award in Transportation for less than $2 million category for the Mississauga Road Environmental Assessment Project. This project raised the level of profile of engagement and partnership for the delivery of the EA in the Region of Peel. This award was recognized and committed to preserving the environment, engaging stakeholders, and to deliver an important project. On behalf of the Region of Peel, I would like to recognize and thank the members of the EA team for their effort and to find a new solution. The team was also developed partnership with the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Credit Valley Conservation Authority, local municipalities, Hydro, CN Railroad, and development in the industry. I would I would like now to introduce Joe Johnson, President of the Ontario Public Works Association, who will be making the presentation on the award. So I'd like Joe to come forward, and at the same time, I'd also like to recognize the councillors and staff and thank Joe. I would also like to recognize the team member presented, and again, it's Damien, Steve Gashin, and the complete management team that was with that program and the study, and Neil Smith, the project manager of Mississauga Road, EA. You may have a seat. Hi, Joe.
Mr. Chair. Yes, good morning, Council, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, the Ontario Public Works Association represents all the public works professionals across Ontario. We're a chapter of the American Public Works Association, about 30,000 professionals managing every. I know there's many of you around the chamber here, many of the faces of which I recognize, very integral and very well educated in the importance of infrastructure and public works across our fine province. So I don't need any more further description of the importance of infrastructure and investments in public works in Peel or the province or North America for that matter. But suffice it to say, the only reason I give you that background is there was many submissions that were made for 2013, many excellent submissions, and in the wisdom of the Ontario Public Works Association, we found it very fit to award the Mississauga Road Solution project as the project of the year in this category. So congratulations to the region of Peel, and again to Director Albanese and Steve Ganesh and Neil Smith and his team, and also the Conservation Authority as well. I understand Jacob Killis is here as well. Excellent partnership, and one of the reasons it was chosen was because of the partnership, because of the thoroughness, because of the cost effectiveness, and just because of the overall presentation and efficiency with that project compared to vis-a-vis many of the other projects. So once again, congratulations. We appreciate the support of the Ontario Public Works Association by the Region of Peel, and very well deserved. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to ask all of those that are involved, the chairs, the staff, the commissioner, and the vice chair of Public Works. In fact, I think being chosen as the outstanding for the first presentation. If council want to get into that picture, I have no problem with that either. So could those come forward then, and I'll let council choose on their own.
So the argument today is what you want to look at.
A motion to receive the second delegation and a
Yeah.
motion for the report, the drainage report.
Could I have a motion to receive the second delegation? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Also, we could deal with the report of PB1, and for both of those, someone like to move and second that? Mover? Yes. Are there any questions on the report? If not, all of those in favor? I'd like everybody to put their hand up at once. It's hard to see. Okay, carried. Thank you. The next presentation, then we have Neil, right? Ahmed, the Senior Project Manager for Partnership Transportation Planning, M&M Group Limited. Would you like to come forward, please? Good morning.
Good morning.
You may start.
Thank you, Chair Colbin. Council, my name is Natalie Ruskov, and I am actually the new Ministry Project Manager for Stage 2 of the GTA West. I appreciate this opportunity to come to you today to present our project. With me, as you may recognize, is Neil Ahmed from MMM Group. Neil is the Consultant Project Manager for Stage 2 of the GTA West. Neil was also the Consultant Project Manager and his team for Stage 1 of the GTA West, so it's nice to have the continuity on our project team. Before I turn things over to Neil, I would like to announce that, quite happily announce that Stage 2 is actively underway. We recognize the region's strong interest in moving this project forward as quickly as possible. We've been working with regional and municipal staff to do so, and we will continue to solicit input on moving this project forward efficiently.
Okay. Yes, good morning, and I'm very happy to be in this position again to steer this project forward and to completion as a member of a large consultant group. We are, again, the MMM Group, URS Canada, and AECOM Canada, all participating in this project to bring some completion to this massive undertaking. We have a brief presentation this morning. I'll start into that and take you through a bit of a background on where we are going with this project. To start off with, as the slide, and we have a package I think that were handed out earlier to you as well. Stage 1 of the EA process was completed back in November of 2012, some time ago, and since then Ministry's been under a process of getting Stage 2 started, but I just wanted to highlight that Stage 1 included a number of recommendations, and it kind of ties into the earlier presentations today. You talked about smart commuting and sustainable transportation and so on. Our study includes a number of multimodal features. This is not just a highway project. It is a project that brings in all of the elements of making more efficient and more efficient use of transportation facilities, bringing in optimization techniques as well. So Stage 1 did recommend transit improvements for the GTA West area, which of course includes Vaughan, Brampton, and Halton Hills, all the way into Milton. We have transportation demand management measures, which is largely the carpooling, staggered work hours, that sort of thing. Optimizing existing transportation systems, which includes the HOV lane program, widening existing highways, and of course a new transportation corridor, which is really the focus of this this Stage 2 study. That graphic in the corner there is only really to illustrate the general idea of the process, moving from Stage 1 to Stage 2, which will then complete the individual EA process. Stage 2 work, and this graphic here illustrates the study area for the route planning work that we are going to be undertaking. The Stage 2 work involves looking at a new corridor from Highway 400 in the east all the way over to the 401, 407 area on the west side. It's a length of about 55 kilometers. It does include connections to Highway 400, 427 extension, the 410, and the 401, 407. This route planning study represents a new corridor in this area that's shown in a dashed outline there. The study itself will include looking at a new 400 series highway with interchanges. It will include a transitway, a dedicated transitway very similar to the Mississauga Transitway. And we're looking at also some potential goods movements priority features, and we're looking at different techniques that could improve goods movement. This is going to identify improvements to facilitate growth in population and employment to the area. We have a number of benefits that are listed here, and I just wanted to highlight that this is going to represent better connectivity between urban growth centers, enhancing movement of people and goods, improving commuting, and generally providing better economic vitality to the whole area, and that's good for the whole of the GTA. We are not doing this alone inside MTO and our consultant team. We actually are going to be introducing a whole host of consultation approaches. As we had done in Stage 1, we're going to be building on those techniques and actually doing more. A comprehensive consultation plan is underway to engage stakeholders, and that is good news for everybody in the community to be able to involve themselves in the study if they want to. We have a number of stakeholder advisory groups. I just wanted to highlight these. They include different categories of stakeholders. The Municipal Advisory Group will be reformed, which is going to take on representation from all the local and regional municipalities. We have a new group, which is going to be a Municipal Executive Advisory Group, which will be members of senior staff from the regions across the board. The York, Halton, and Peel regions will all be involved in that. Community Advisory Group, which is a representation of different stakeholders from different walks of life and interests across the study area, the CAG we call it. We have a Greenbelt Transportation Advisory Group that's fairly new, and that will be focusing on ways of getting a new corridor through the Greenbelt areas, the sensitive areas, so that we don't intrude too much on those areas. We have a Regulatory Advisory Group as well, which will be largely the regulatory agencies involved, and we have Aboriginal communities also represented here as a group we're going to be meeting with. In terms of our next steps, and really just highlighting a few of the key things that are going to be happening across the study process, we actually are launching our project next week, so you'll be seeing that coming out in the newspapers and in correspondence. We have community workshops coming up in the spring, which will be talking about the process, the early starts of the process with the interested parties. Stakeholders meetings, council presentations, all ahead of the Public Information Center #1, which will be later in the year. We talk about winter 2014-2015. And we also have an updated website coming. It's not quite there yet, but we are working on it, and it will be released, a new site with new information at the release next week. So that's really the story for today. Nothing much more than that, just really indicating the release of the Stage 2 work, and we're off and running. So thanks very much.
And Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you for coming, and Natalie, welcome aboard. This corridor goes through right from one side of my ward right to the other, as Neil knows. My concern that we have here is I was kind of hoping we'd be a lot further along than where we are. You're affecting Caledon's economic prosperity rate at the moment. We got building permits, we got site plans waiting, and we understood 2 years ago that you were going to expedite those pinch points to get this resolved. I'm devastated to see that it's not going to be for another year and a half, and that's unacceptable. It's very unacceptable. You've had a lot of time going through this. I understand there's a process, but this is just dragged out way, way too long. And I'm sorry, I'm not very happy about it at all. I know the GTAC has been working on some of this already, and I was kind of hoping we could see some results. And as you do go forward, I would also ask your consultations be held in the corridor areas. It's very unfair to ask people to drive 30, 50 kilometers to go to a meeting down in Oakville or other areas, and thank you for finally putting one in Brampton Fairgrounds. And that's what I would ask, because it's not fair to the residents. We're affecting everybody's. This is going to be a big change, and yes, it's an economic corridor for us. But I would ask that you work in the community that you're dealing with this time around. I got to say, thank you for your delegation, but I was really hoping for a lot more than this. I'm just really devastated that it's just. We're only this far. I was expecting a lot more. And we've got a lot of companies. As I said, we have site plans, we have building permits ready to be issued. And I think it was on trust this, we're going to expedite this, and nothing's happened. When I read through the bullets here before, I was kind of hoping maybe you'd have a little bit more, and there's nothing. And I don't know what else you can tell me, but this is just way too long. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson, we really understand your concerns, and particularly the concerns of Caledon, especially in Caledon because it's quite a close community. So we understand that you're hearing it from your local residents, and we also understand that Stage 1 was a lengthy study. Stage 1 had a lot to accomplish in that time frame. So. We understand, and we really appreciate that you've had to be very patient with us. What I can offer you is that the ministry is really listening to those concerns, and we're really trying to expedite this study as much as we reasonably can within the EA process. And what we're doing for this study that we don't typically do is through a phased approach throughout the length of the study, we are releasing objections to these developments that are within the study corridor at appropriate times with public consultation. And that's something we don't do, but it's in response to the concerns that we've heard.
Well, and thank you for addressing that, but you have to understand the frustration that we're at. And I also would say afterwards, I think eventually we're going to send a notice of motion through that we understand the EA process, but when it was first created, municipalities weren't there yet, and we didn't have consultants that had the knowledge. We have now, and to me I think it's important to have the EAs, but this is just overkill. It is, and we've got the knowledge and the basis, and we've got trained staff at all levels that I think we could expedite this much, much quicker than where we're sitting at.
Thank you. Mayor Morrison? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Palashi?
Did you think I wasn't going to be nice or something? And that's what wanted
I
to
was
bypass
looking,
me?
your name just disappeared, and I wondered where it went. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thanks for the delegation, and congratulations, Natalie. As you know, from a Brampton perspective, we've had there's been a number of meetings, and we dealt with Bob, your predecessor, and I did express disappointment when Bob said, you're not the only municipalities with priorities. There are other municipalities, and everybody has priorities all the way across the corridor. And I understand that. I absolutely do. I guess where I have the difficulty is in our report saying that it's still a 3 to 5 year process. I mean, I hope that you commit, and there was some commitment. I believe that there was some reducing of the corridors. I thought the mention of about 18 months, I think it was, that you would be able to come back, and that was some time ago that Bob had started that, saying that you would be able to reduce the size of those corridors, because as you know, and I know the EA process very well, that you have to look at all aspects and you try to take as wide a corridor as you can to study all the options. I guess my point, though, is in going through, and the same with Caledon, I mean, in the east side of Brampton, it is a large employment area for both Brampton and Caledon in that area. And there are some restrictions, and you notice that on your on the plan, you show a very narrowing of that section when you go look at the overall picture. But there's still areas there of restraint that you can't, for example, you can't cross a street twice in one of the routes that they were potentially looking at. I mean, it's physically impossible to do that, or if it is, it's very bad planning to do that issue. I guess in the west, as you know, we've been dealing with the north-south corridor at both the city and the region on that issue. We've been collecting regional development charges for that north-south corridor through coming down into Mississauga and in Brampton in that issue there. And at least now the ministry has finally said, and the minister has stated that they would take into account all those studies that we've done, so you don't have to redo them. But the issue there is the narrowing of the corridor also. You can only cross the Credit River in one place. And when you can only, according to the conservation authorities, you can only cross that credit without a major impact. There's only one spot that you could, our corridor going, which is going to tie into yours. So in order to do that, that should, I believe, shorten that area also, or eliminate part of that area where you're looking at a broader area, but you could reduce that. And that would free up some employment areas in that we're going through, because we're into, as Alan mentioned, I mean, in the city of Brampton, we're into secondary plan stages. We protected for the corridor right from the very start. In Brampton, and with the support of the Region Appeal, we protected that corridor. And I really don't want to see duplication, and I think that's part of it that takes up time. And I hope that you would agree that anything that we've already done, you don't have to do again. You would accept it. It was done by reputable people. You were involved in part of those studies too, in dealing with M&M, so Triple M. And so I guess the point I want to make is that and I hope you do realize how critical it is to the economic issues in Caledon, you mentioned, that you know that, and certainly to the economic, because that affects employment lands both in Brampton. It affects residential too, but the point really is the opportunity for employment rather than just residential. So we hope that in your stage 2 that you would work to shorten it as much as possible. Not take the 3 to 5 years to do the overall. Alan's absolutely right. And as you said, the first stage took, I think, a little bit longer than what everybody had anticipated in dealing with it. And hopefully the second stage could be done a lot quicker. And I'm glad I don't have your job. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Kolb. Thank you for coming and bringing us an update. I will not belabor what you've already heard from Councillor Thompson and Councillor Palashi. You know my position. You have frozen all of our employment lands on the west side of Caledon, and we need that freed up as soon as possible. The way the province of Ontario makes us plan nowadays, planning by numbers, it's very difficult for us to free up employment land or bring new employment land on in a timely manner. This we had on. And I'm going to tell you that when you first came out with your corridor, the big wide one that took in half of Brampton, or most of Brampton, because it went down to the 407 originally, and I thought that was a bit of a joke because you'd have to tear down all the houses and everything in Brampton, so it was a farce. But and we all knew that Mayfield Road would basically be the line, the bottom line of the study, and you eventually brought it into that. I did a little map of my own, and I said, let's use common sense. Where should this corridor go? And I drew a line, and of course, I went across the narrowest stream corridors because they're the smallest bridges. Bridges are really expensive, as you know, and ended up bringing it down to Round. And I can't wait to see what you bring forward, because I'll almost lay you odds it's going to be almost exactly what I drew on a piece of paper, and I'm not an engineer. So I would encourage you, please, to free up especially the employment lands as quickly as possible, both in Brampton and in Caledon, because to continue growing residentially and not have your employment base just totally skews your assessment and causes huge problems. So, and I am a little disappointed also to see that it's 3 to 5 years, because I do remember the last time you were here saying that we need this freed up, and we were told that it would be shortly, would be quite soon. And I don't consider another 3 to 5 years shortly or soon. But I would like to go on record thanking you very much for MTO allowing Aloha Public School to go forward. The school that is there now is falling apart, has water and sewage problems, and finally to free that up is, and that, I can tell you my line wouldn't have interfered with Aloha School, so you're probably putting it in the right place. And so I thank you for letting Aloha Public School go forward. I know the residents are going to be thrilled. And going back probably 2 years now, I also thank you for letting Auckland Granger go forward, because it was the smart thing to do. So I do hope you'll make this quick, though, please. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead.
Well, thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the map be put back on the screen, please?
My keyboard's not working here. Let's see if I can get this. There we have.
Thanks very much.
Sure.
As Councillor Thompson said in South Caledon, this goes entirely through his ward, well, and the rest of South Caledon entirely goes through my ward too, as you know. And Councillor Sparvieri and I share ward boundaries in the area around Brampton Northeast and Albion South, Ward 4. But I want to speak from an appeal perspective, since we're in appeal meeting here. It's not only to Caledon and Brampton's advantage to get our industrial lands clarified as to where they can grow and how they can develop. It's really a appeal issue, because as Mississauga and Brampton are being encouraged to intensify as the industrial fabric of Peel is changing, frankly, the industries are for the most part not coming from somewhere else. They're relocating from parts of Peel to the Mayfield corridor, if I can use that word. From a province's standpoint, one of the main reasons that you're studying and will build the East-West corridor is as an economic corridor to tie together industrial lands and economic traffic. And I would suggest in South Caledon that is the priority more than the residential question. You know, the widest study areas you have are really in the rural areas of Councillor Thompson's ward and mine. And it won't be for 30 years. that residential populations start to move into that area of the White Belt. So really the priority is to identify where exactly you want to build the economic road so we can get on with economic development from a Peel and provincial perspective. I don't think that it really makes sense, and I know we're going to have to write to the minister rather than negotiate with you because you're really carrying out your duty, but we really have to press, we meaning the region of Peel, plus the constituent municipalities, really need to press on the province of Ontario that notwithstanding how EAs usually work, the work that brings to a conclusion where the highway is going to be in the pinch points needs to take place sooner than the range of time you're talking about to complete how you're going to identify the route for the highway. Because regardless of how you meander through the countryside, and I'm also on the board of the TRCA and the executive, or how you try to get across the Humber River east of Caledon in Vaughan, and to get to the 400, regardless of how you create the road network, you are going to be in the pinch point. And I strongly represent to you, to take back to the ministry and also to the councillors here, that we need a strong resolution from the Region of Peel saying to the province of Ontario, it's completely possible to make the hard decision on the exact road allowance in these two pinch points in the Bolton area and in the Mayfield West area in advance of finishing the rest of the work. The minister, I was on the 427 review committee many years ago, and for years, and Mayor Morrison was on it as well. And it wasn't difficult for the minister of the day, once he put his mind to it, to first of all say he was going to split the process and do the south part of the 427 extension first, and leave the from Vaughan to Bradford question till later. And then, of course, what happened historically is the province looked at itself one day and said, we can't build the Bradford extension of the 427 and an east-west corridor. There's not enough money to do that. So we're not going to do the Bradford one. They abandoned that, and they started this process. This is where the 427 extension money went to, was the east-west corridor issue, and they made the right decision. But if the minister was capable at that time of splitting the EA, the minister is capable at this time of not splitting your EA, but changing your EA such that the priority is to identify the exact area and the pinch points within a very few number of months. And then you go on with the rest of the process. Just take a little sidetrack and say, all right, well, we're going to take these two relatively short routes and the population affected in there, and we're just simply going to come to a conclusion. So I know I'm not asking a question, I'm making a statement, Mr. Chairman, but I think this is the course we have to take now as the Region of Peel, as Caledon, and as Brampton, and to formally request the minister to change the process so that these two pinch points are resolved in the shortest period of time, not interfering at all with the rest of your good work, which is to find out in the broader band how you're going to deal with the residential and rural fact of Caledon and the Humber River watershed in Vaughan. Thank you.
Councillor Sprovieri.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and along the same lines as the previous speakers, Mr. Ahmed, you look like you've been around a long time. You're obviously you're an engineer by trade, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. And so your new partner, Natalie Ruskov, you look like you're a young progressive and want to reach high levels, right? So I would think that you two probably could draw the line here today and show us exactly where that corridor is going to be. Today, you could probably do it. Because there's so many logical places you could put it. And I know the process, you have to look at a wide scope to satisfy the people who are going to be impacted. That's the whole issue. But along the same lines as Councillor Whitehead, because my constituents who own land in Bram East there, and those lands are prime land for employment today. We were watching Vaughan across the street, gung-ho putting developing their lands, and ours are stale. And I would like to ask you a simple question. Can you, with your expertise, go back to the ministry and recommend that you focus on those 2 pinch points and to fast track or to focus on that and develop where the crossings will be? Because once you determine the crossing on the Credit River and the Humber River, that will pretty well tell the story for where the road's going to go in those areas. And that will resolve the west side and the east side. The rest of it, as Councillor Whitehead said, it can be done with, in time. So can you do that? Do you need a resolution from council asking for that?
I need the 14 issue rectified.
Order, please.
So can you give us an answer to that?
Well, I guess I'm hearing a strong message, and I've heard it many times here before. I guess the thing that we can offer is that we will move quickly with our process. We have a very big area to cover off. Yes, there are a lot of priorities and constraints across the whole corridor. We're trying to do the study in a consistent and progressive manner, but obviously these pinch points, there's a few options that exist in those areas. We probably could land on them very quickly. But we do need to go through this process in a fair way to bring in opportunities for consultation with affected landowners and try to find out for ourselves what the sensitivities are so that we can make avoidances where they're required and try to find the best home for this thing, trying to balance the impacts and the benefits to the best that we can. And I guess I should also mention here that we are looking for homes for interchanges. So there's going to be not only the route itself, but where are we going to be putting these grade separations and interchanges to provide access to the communities and also to provide linkages across this new highway. But that's all got to be done as part of this work as well. So that's another complicating factor where you're going to be putting these interchanges. We're not putting them everywhere, so there's some interest in doing that properly. But we will move as fast as we can in these priority areas. We know the pressures. We are very much aware of that, and we're going to be working with the municipalities, engaging them as best we can to ensure that we're able to best try to match the pressures that we have and that you have in moving your developments forward. It's going to be a combined effort here, and we will continue to try to work as quickly as we can in these areas, but no guarantees. And I think we're not looking to release the final route at the end of 3 to 5 years. There will be opportunities even before that to start to release some of the lands where we know that we're not likely to be going, get those out there earlier. So there's some positive news. I think it'll come quicker than the 3 to 5 years for sure.
Councillor Foley.
Hold on. I'm not finished this, Chair.
Okay.
So you didn't really answer my question. The question I asked was, can you recommend to your people to focus on those 2 pinch points to get these areas cleared sooner rather than later?
I understand that this was a strong message that was sort of originated in stage 1. And I think actually the ministry has always been supportive of taking a look at these pinch points, recognizing the constraints and the sort of challenges related to them. We have committed to forming working groups. Some of them have formed, some of them are to be formed soon, and we do understand, and there may be opportunities for advanced design details in these areas, but it cannot be at the jeopardy of the rest of the project. So, like Neil said, it really is a balanced approach, and it's not because we're trying to escape anything. It's just the nature of the way the project must happen.
Well,
Okay, John, I think
hold on,
John,
Mr. Chairman, please. This is an important issue for my area, and I
Yes,
like
it
to
is.
really talk about this.
Okay.
I've seen people go on here for hours, and you have not cut them off. Please. Now, I know that, as I mentioned before, I'm aware of the process that you have to look at wide scope. There's areas here where it totally doesn't make sense. For instance, the north in Bolton there, just to the west of Bolton, it goes right up there and then down straight. Now that area there, it makes no sense. On the west side, the same thing. There's a big area there that has a jogged area. You're not going to put the highway, like this, right? So can't you minimize this corridor at this time and take out these illogical areas where it doesn't make sense?
Well, there will be a phased removal of objections as the study progresses, and we expect that will happen. It can't happen probably as quickly as you want it, but it will happen throughout the study process, so it will get better. So we expect that once we have the route alternatives generated, which we are anticipating to have done within 12 months' time, or even less, we'll have a better picture of where the routes are going, and therefore we'll be able to sort of ease off on the other areas. So, and then that will happen again once we select the preferred route alternative. So it is happening, but it has to happen in a phased approach, and stakeholder input is very important to this process as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, I'm not going to reiterate what everyone has said. I represent Bolton, so I'm the other Calvin voice in the room. I just wanted to make sure that went down on record. We need just for you to go away with the understanding that this is very critical for us. If you look at this image, the bulk of it goes across Caledon. So it's very, very important for us that it move along as quickly as absolutely possible. You've talked about a 3 to 5 year time frame. You've talked about releasing lands along throughout that process and not making us wait to the end. Do you have any kind of idea when we might expect the first round of releasing may come? Give us some hope.
Well, I think that it will coincide with the results that we receive from the first PIC and that feedback. But until that point, until we get that stakeholder input, that's really actually quite critical to that process.
So you're talking about the PIC that's forthcoming in the fall? And what is the reason that can't happen until winter of 2014, 2015?
Well, it's just a matter of collecting the information and generating the route alternatives, and that does take some time. Neil, you can probably speak more to that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we do have to understand what the issues are in the area, what the sensitivities are. Understand the area, and we go through a process of route planning after that. That's at the point. That's a point when we've got some route alternatives and there's other areas that are outside of that area. We can start to take those away fairly quickly. We don't have any interest. Just remember that, and I may have mentioned this at an earlier council presentation, but the area that's shown here was made as big as possible in order to allow us the best opportunity to find a home for this new highway. If we really narrowed this down and later found that we had some issues in there, we would have no recourse to go outside of that area. The bigger the area at this point is better for our work to proceed properly. But anyway, we do have to go through a bit of a process there to understand the area and then generate these route alternatives. That's going to take us a large part of this year. It's a big area.
Would I be too hopeful to say then maybe something will happen in 2015?
Yeah, I think by the time we have our first round of public information centers and understand whether we've got a selection of routes that are okay, then we can start to release those lands outside those areas.
Thank you.
Councillor Paterak.
Yes, I have a question. I hope it's not an unfair one. We've been concentrating on the EA, but I wondered if Natalie would have any information as to when how long into the future the MTO is thinking about having earth movers on the ground?
Unfortunately, I have no information for that to answer that question appropriately. I don't have a crystal ball, and
Okay.
it's just
The reason why I ask that is because if it happens sooner, this road will be built with gravel from my area, Ward 1 of the town of Caledon. If you project this out 20 years from now, it will cost a whole lot more because you'll be going into Grey County. If you build it now, or 5 or 7 or 10 years, you have a chance of having some rather inexpensive materials available to you. The mayor and I were, Mayor Morrison and I were just talking yesterday, and she had been talking to the executive director of the OSSGA, who said to her, in 20 years, Caledon will be out of gravel. And I'm not sure it'll be out of gravel entirely, but certain products certainly will be gone. We'll be left with specialized products, but in terms of base materials, probably gone. So
Mayor McCallion.
Support Caledon and Brampton's position. I'll tell you why. We had information came to me this past week, and the ratio between jobs or employment and residential in Mississauga is 63%. And in Brampton, it's either 44 or 45. I'm not sure. And it is going to go down in Brampton. And it's going to go down because the residential is going to be out of whack with the commercial. I don't know the figure for Caledon. I can't remember it, but it was in a document that I received. That is of grave concern. Grave concern to Peel, by the way. Very grave concern. Concern to us as a city, even though we have 63%. And ours can't get much worse because our residential development is completed. But I'll tell you, it concerns me that Brampton is going to drop. I think it was from 45 to 41. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot in relationship. The percentage is a lot. So that means that Peel is going to suffer. And you folks have come forward with a growth plan encouraging us to relate residential to employment. You can't have it both ways. And that's what is happening. You're doing a highway and taking far too long to do it. And they are going to be seriously affected by the economics. So surely, you know, one thing I've learned about China, they don't try to do the whole project at one time. They, over a long number of years. They plan the project to be all built at one time. And I have to tell you that you folks have to find a way for the benefit of Peel, for the unemployment issues, for our social costs, and all the implications of us building more residential and less employment. So Brampton and Caledon, here they are pleading with you to release these areas as quickly as possible because it affects us, because the tax bill is on all of us. So I hope that you folks will give a lot of consideration to what Caledon and Brampton has raised this morning. There must be a way. Yes, I know you have to go through a full environmental assessment, but don't wait till the whole thing is planned before you release the employment lands. Residential, I'm sure they're not concerned about, but they certainly are, and so are we in Mississauga. So you've got Mississauga, they have Mississauga's support to get those industrial commercial lands released as quickly as possible. And it can't take the number of years. You know, I think the link to the airport took 20, 25 years to get it. That's the way the province operates, 20 to 25 years. I was on the committee 20 years ago to look at the link to the airport, and it's now being built in 2014. This can't happen. This will have serious impact on the region of Peel. Very serious impact. And so there is a solution. Don't say it can't be done. Tell us how it can be done.
Mayor Morrison.
Just quickly, I know that Councillor Sprovieri is trying to plan this with you to free up lands for Vaughan and Brampton, but please don't forget the industrial part of Caledon. Thank you. And our employment to residential assessment is 18% to 82%. And the problem is the province of Ontario ties all these numbers now, so they won't let us catch up before they tie the number of residential to the number of employment. So heaven only knows how we are ever going to get ahead. So,
Mayor Fennell?
Oh, thank you. Just to complement what my colleagues are saying, Brampton designated for extraordinary residential growth under Ontario Places to Grow, a designated urban place to grow, designated to accept a vast intensification in existing areas and have prepared the new areas for accepting residential growth, and virtually no infrastructure to support our planned growth for job lands, employment lands. It's fine for us if we do designate. The designated employment lands will carry us, we have been, to C45, it used to be 10% or more lower, but we're not going to achieve the employment growth when we can't move the goods and services. We were in a meeting this morning with Pearson and how we're looking at the growth of Pearson. And there, when I first arrived here, we were talking about the 427 and the Tulip and all the lands we froze because we weren't sure where the EA would say the highway would go. And this was tied up for 20-odd years on either side, employment lands directly north of the airport, regardless of York Region or Peel Region. People couldn't locate there because they were all frozen. So to narrow the scope, to quickly eliminate the environmental process is too much red tape. It's the most costly process. We've had these meetings with the province. It drives up costs of development. It drives up the cost of land. It takes away our competitive factor when companies want to locate here because the land prices have gone. People are having to pay taxes. We're trying to get the land serviced, and there's not, we can't move forward. We're very interested in having our designated employment lands ready and available, not tied up in these vast lines of here's our study area. I don't know how we can impact expediting that, but there's no question from the bridges going over these roads to the actual direction of the roads, it is, well, if it's 20 years, those companies will be in Kitchener, Waterloo, or Buffalo. We want the businesses here in Brampton to support the jobs in Brampton. I remember early on in Peel, we used to use the phrase home in 15. Do you remember that? Well, now it's 15 minutes from the time you get out of your car to walk up your driveway because there's so much snow and ice. But this home in 15 model that we proclaimed back in 1990, you're barely down the street in the first 15 minutes, and then you're in total gridlock and worse, the goods and services. So it's good that we're planning, but we have to not repeat the exercise of the 427 because that went through, I don't know how many mayors. Mayor Lorna Jackson was involved when I first became mayor. There was ongoing discussions about how we're going to narrow the Tulip. We never did extend the highway. I think we just narrowed the Tulip, but we never did. Really, the highway still ends where the highway ends. So 20 years delay, and we just started to talk about a different highway. We didn't even end up with the highway. Amazing.
Yes, that concludes the list. I guess the only comment I want to make is why can't those public information meetings move up? Why do they have to wait until next fall in 2015? You've done the first round. There must be information that you've collected that is very important. But you could also, at these public meetings, if you had these public meetings in the next few months, you could, I'm sure every councillor has an interest in it, would come and give you theirs on the map. It's pretty hard to pick out of this map. I mean, you did show a picture in your presentation about how you're going to set up your meetings and all the maps and I don't know why that couldn't be done in the next month or two and allow the councillors to go and bring their concerns forward. At least you'd have them now, not 2 years from now. And I know you've had that study done for a long time, and the government seemed to me just was was killing time about starting the second phase. I don't know whether you have another job in between or what. It's none of my business, I guess. But I just say, I think if you would work towards having those public meetings early, at least the first one in the next month or 6 weeks, and bring those maps that you already showed in your presentation, and allow the councillors to meet with you in a session where they can have an hour, 2 hours. If John wants 10 hours, it doesn't matter to me. But at least he can bring his concerns forth. You can have that information, and you can go away and you have something to work with, at least at the beginning, not at the very end, and then you use another 2 years or 5 years. Seems to be that 10 years that you announced at the very beginning was like a start and a goal somewhere, and then, well, it slipped a bit, so we need another 2 years. It slipped a bit, we need another 2 years. It's really the way the system works. So let's, as everybody has said, let's try to make it work, and let's try to find ways to make it work. So that's my comments for you to take back, and I'll ask the motion to receive the delegation. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you. Thanks again for being here. Okay, we're moving on to item D and E, which is delegation again, is Diane Kalichuk, a citizen of Mississauga, and also I will say that the legal counsel for the report that's in the council agenda is here also, and she's agreed to answer any questions that may be of her. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here. It's my first time at Regional Council, so it's
You may
nice
sit
to
down.
see your work in action.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and councillors of Peel Region. I am Diane Kalinchuk of Mississauga, and I thank you for your time this morning. My husband John and I have been residents of Mississauga and Peel Region since 1974. Over these many years, we and all residents have been very fortunate to have experienced the outstanding leadership and dedication of our Mayor, Hazel McCallion. As you know, Madam Mayor has served our city of Mississauga and the region of Peel for over 35 years. Mayor Hazel McCallion of Mississauga, in her capacity as a councillor for the region of Peel, successfully defended a complaint brought against her under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The complaint related to motions moved and seconded and votes taken during the development charges bylaw process at the region in 2007. Having been successful, Mayor McCallion is entitled to the payment of a proportion of her legal costs from the unsuccessful complainant. Such costs were awarded to her by the Ontario Superior Court. The complainant has refused to pay on the basis that he has no assets. Having exhausted all other avenues available to her, I now request that the region indemnify her pursuant to the region's bylaw 38-2005, quote, a bylaw to provide for certain insurance and reimbursement of employees and members of council by the regional municipality of Peel. The bylaw states that the MCIA actions are exempt from coverage, but that council retains the discretion to extend coverage in circumstances deemed appropriate by council. I submit that such coverage is appropriate in the circumstances that I detail now. The complainant alleged that Mayor McCallion had a conflict of interest with respect to certain motions moved and votes taken by Mayor McCallion at a Peel Regional Council with respect to the 2007 Development Charges Bylaw. The court found that Mayor McCallion did not have a conflict of interest and that the complainant brought the application out of time. As Mayor McCallion was successful in her defense of the application, she asked the court to award her her cost of the defense. She asked the court for $394,529 in costs on a partial indemnity basis. In Ontario, except in certain exceptional circumstances, the normal measure of costs is partial indemnity, or roughly 60% of the amount expended. Hourly rates used to calculate this amount are on a tariff basis substantially lower than the actual rates charged in the region. The court ultimately awarded Mayor McCallion $170,000 in costs. The complainant has refused to honor that award on the basis that he has no assets, and he has provided a sworn statement to that effect. Importantly, the court recognized that the amount claimed was reasonable on a partial indemnity basis. The court stated that this was a complex matter, although all counsel, quote, cooperated and presented case efficiently and effectively, unquote. There were over 5,000 pages of affidavit evidence and 2,500 pages of transcript evidence relating to 13 days of out-of-court examination. There were 11 days in court. The court found that A, the costs claimed were reasonable, B, the litigation was politically motivated and did not arise from a bona fide concern for the public interest, and C, any public interest in investigation of the events regarding WCD had previously been satisfied by the Mississauga inquiry. The court also, when reducing the amount to be paid by the complainant to Mayor McCallion, explicitly recognized, although stated that he could not take into account, that the mayor has the ability to ask that council indemnify her. Accordingly, I now ask that the region indemnify Mayor McCallion pursuant to the terms of the bylaw. If I may go over the bylaw again. The bylaw provides that a covered action or proceeding is one that is A, brought after the passage of the bylaw, B, arising out of acts or omissions done by a covered individual in the attempted performance in good faith of her or her duties as a member of council. C, in the performance of any statutory duty. MCIA proceedings are excluded from the normal coverage, but council may vote to extend such coverage pursuant to Section 19 of the bylaw. The actions satisfy these criteria. It was A, commenced in 2011 after the passage of the bylaw, and B, concerned votes taken by the mayor or motions moved in the course of her duties as a councillor of the region. The court found these acts were not a conflict of interest and thus were in good faith. MCIA and similar applications have been found by other municipal councils and the courts as properly covered by similar bylaws. Cases involving both Toronto and Thunder Bay have approved of or acknowledged the propriety of a council indemnifying its councillors where they have been successful in defeating the MCIA or similar claim concerning acts done in the course of these activities as councillors. Mayor McCallion was forced to mount a vigorous defense in this case because of the potential effect on her reputation, her career, and her responsibilities as a democratically elected mayor of Mississauga, as well as a Peel regional councillor. As such, the costs expended were proportionate with the potential impact on Mayor McCallion's reputation and career. In all, I request that she be indemnified for the total costs of defending the action, being $513,430, which is the total amount expended less the $100,000 recovered from the applicable insurance policy. I ask the council indemnifies her for this amount. Any councillor could be subject to an unsuccessful Municipal Conflict of Interest Act complaint, and personally bearing the potential extreme cost of defending such complaints could have a potentially chilling effect on those who might otherwise consider public service. I would be pleased to provide any further information for you, and I want to say that the mayor's lawyer, Freya Christensen, is in attendance this morning if there are any questions for her at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Sado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Diane, for being here. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to speak to the presentation, and I have a motion that I want to speak to, but Councillor Sprovieri, I think, has a quick question of the deputant, so I wouldn't mind him going first if he wishes to ask.
Okay, Councillor Sprovieri. I do have Councillor Miles on the list, but Councillor Sprovieri. No, I'm the chair.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Diane. I do have a question. And you know, just to say off the top, the beginning, I have no problem in supporting what you're requesting at this point. But there is one issue that I have to mention. I am concerned about the public perception. If this council does what we are asking. In a council perception, it was a very publicized case, and it was very, everybody knows about it because Hazel's great reputation, and so everybody paid attention. But everyone knows that the reason why the case was dismissed is because the complaint was lodged a bit too late, and so they figured that was a kind of a, you know, so the question that they was to really be cleared, and I believe that that this walk-on motion that was given to her to sign at the last minute before council, probably Hazel didn't even think about the ramifications, or her son, or whatever was going on. She probably figured it was someone asked her to sign it, and it wasn't on the agenda, first of all. So it was a last-minute thing, and she says, "Oh, sure, just sign it off, you know, and let's go on to the meeting." And I believe that's what happened. So I don't have a problem with supporting what you're asking. But we also have to deal with public perception, and this has to be really made clear that this request is that the mayor was kind of, I would say, you know, not coerced but surprised seconding the motion. And I think that that has to be well explained to the public, because not only will residents of Mississauga cover this bill, but residents of Brampton and of Caledon. So this is my comment. I don't know whether you want to touch it or. Yeah, it's a question. I don't know whether you want to touch it or whether, how we address this perception, but the public, there's going to be a reaction when listening this. When council, you know, and I will support it, I said, because I believe that what happened was a surprise situation on her. Okay?
Before...
If I may...
Just...
Thank you. If I might, there were some factual issues about the lawsuit that it might be helpful for me to address. My name is Freya Christensen. Was the mayor's lawyer on this. I think it's important to understand, first of all, that the judge found she was not in a conflict of interest. So there were two grounds on which she won. A, she was found to be not in a conflict of interest, and B, the motion was brought out of time. So that's crystal clear. And secondly, the lawsuit did not involve just one motion. It involved all of the development charges process and all of the motions. So it was the participation in a whole number of motions. So it was the entire development charge process in 2007, and I think that's important to understand as well. So from a factual perspective, I just wanted to get that straight.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to Councillor Sato.
Thank you. I wouldn't have given up my spot if I thought there wasn't a question, but
thank you.
Anyway, so I'm going to speak then. Mr. Chairman, I came here this morning prepared to move a motion that council indemnify the mayor for the amount that's being asked for, and I do have a mover for that motion. I think the information that Diane has provided is very clear that Mayor McCallion was moved the motion at the council meeting in order on the request of the city of Brampton, and had that request, the motion and the request that came specifically in writing, walked on by the city of Brampton that day. Had that request not come forward, such a motion would never have been moved, or probably never have been moved at the region. We are, as members of council, we are very vulnerable to someone who is going to jump, or anyone who is going to jump on one little action that, no matter how serious it is, takes someone to court, usually under Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and costs them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. and it's too easy for that to happen. The Mississauga inquiry was a $7 million fiasco that cost the taxpayers money and resulted in nothing. And this was another situation that that the mayor was put into at great cost to both emotional and financial cost. Unfortunately, at the Region of Peel, we only have policies, insurance policies that cover and indemnify up to a certain amount. That amount was $50,000 up until July of last year when the premium was renewed, and staff realized that we could increase to $100,000 at no additional cost. $100,000 is basically a drop in the bucket these days, as you can see. And I don't know if any of us could be sitting here with a bill of $500,000 or $600,000 legal fees, be announced that you did not have a conflict of interest, and not get help from the municipality that you were representing as a duly elected official. It could be anyone around this table that is sitting here. And, you know, we have always been very supportive of our colleagues in the other municipalities and of our citizens. But I can tell you that, you know, all around Ontario, municipal politicians are looking and saying, well, maybe we should just shut up and not say anything, because you could get into hot water very easily and not of your own doing. Having said that, you know, we have the report that came forward has given council, which we got a week ago, and we got all the information that Diane provided today a week ago. So all the information has been in our hands. The bylaw that we have on the books at the Region of Peel, 382005, very clearly says that council can pay the cost of the legal fees under the municipal conflict of interest, if it's a municipal conflict of interest issue. It covers anything else. Municipal conflict of interest is exempted under the general bylaw, but there is the opportunity for council to use its discretion. And as Diane has pointed out, councils in other municipalities have used their discretion several times to do that, to support their council. It's my understanding that that in the city of Brampton, you actually have a policy that Councillor Paleschi was advising me of, that if the councillor is found innocent of the case, that the city of Brampton will cover the court costs. We don't have that in Mississauga. We do not have it at the Region of Peel. And I think now that this has come forward, I think we need to have it at the Region of Peel. I can only speak regionally right now. I think we need it in both municipalities. We also have under, according to Patrick, under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, a municipality also has the opportunity and the right to indemnify the costs if the person is found not to be in contravention of the Conflict of Interest Act. So it's not that we are going beyond what we are permitted to do. The law very clearly states that municipalities can do this. I was prepared, as was Mayor Morrison, to move the motion today to pay the costs, and the costs that the court awarded, which was $394,000 and some. Having spoken with, I'm not one that goes around lobbying people, and you all know that. You know, I take my colleagues at face value and hope that the arguments will speak for themselves. But I have been approached by some of my colleagues in Brampton and Caledon who have asked for more information. They want more than what was in the report with regard to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and the ability that it gives us to pay the costs, and also more with regard to bylaw 382005 and that clause that says that municipal council can use its discretion. So I am prepared to not move my motion today, to ask staff to make the motion instead, that staff bring to the next council meeting, because I don't want this to drag on, but the staff bring to the next council meeting a further report that goes into detail what we are allowed to do under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, what we are allowed to do under bylaw 382005, and further, and I know this is going to be tight timing, but I know you've looked into this, Patrick, through over the past months as you were preparing this request, that staff bring forward, and maybe using the City of Brampton as a model, policy as a model, a policy that we can adopt at the Region of Peel that will cover all members of council in a circumstance like this, and have that policy on the book so that the next time someone wants to cause trouble for a member of council, and that member of council is found to be innocent of the charges, that we don't have to go through all of this, that we have a very clear policy that is right here on the books of the Region of Peel that will cover it, and that new members of council, if any are coming in, and we know there are going to be some retirements, that anyone coming onto this council is very aware of what that policy is. So I would move, fortunately I've been trying to formulate that, so I don't have it in writing at this time, Mr. Chairman. But my motion basically is that legal staff, and I think Mayor Morrison is seconding it, that that legal staff prepare, and Patrick, could you just confirm, can you do it for the next council meeting? Okay. The legal staff prepare a report for the next council meeting outlining the specifics in bylaw 382005 as it relates to council's ability within the bylaw to indemnify the costs of a member of council charged under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and declared not to have a conflict of interest, as well as the ability given within the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for council to pay those costs, and further that staff bring forward a policy to regional council that would state clearly that the region, in those cases, that the region would cover those costs. I don't have that wording down exactly, so I'm going to ask for staff's help on that one.
Hey, maybe I'll just go through the list of speakers.
Okay, so I would move that motion, though, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I have it. I'll take it as the motion on the table.
On the table, if I could table that. Thank you.
And I'll deal with it then after I go through the speakers. Councillor Miles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming we're going to bring the report forward that deals with this item from staff as well. Okay. Yep. I don't have a lot to add to the comments that Councillor Sato has made, because I do absolutely agree with what she has said. When I originally looked at the request, it was like, it sort of took my breath away, but I've given it a lot of thought, and I've also read the report that has been provided to us, the letter from the lawyer as well as the report. And I do think it's quite clear that members of council do have the right under the bylaw to indemnify the mayor. And I am absolutely prepared to support that. I don't have any problem. After giving it a lot of consideration, I put myself in Mayor McCallion's shoes. Mm-hmm. And I know that if I was in her position, that this kind of action would absolutely debilitate me and my family financially. So we are at great risk as members of council, and it would appear as time goes on that risk is getting greater. We tend to be targeted by one and all. We're certainly painted with a brush that we're, in a lot of cases, just dirty, rotten politicians that are out to serve our own needs, and I think that's very unfortunate. And I do think it's really unfortunate that Mayor McCallion, after many years of service, ends up in this position. And so I do support it. You know, I guess the other thing that I think about is not only the fact that any one of us could be in the same position as her, but we're human, and we deal with a multitude. I don't think there's any other profession in the world or any other job in the world that deals with such a wide breadth of services and responsibilities from works and roads and water and childcare and planning and it goes on. And we also have a very, very rigorous schedule. And we don't always have the time to do due diligence with our agendas, even though we try. So at any time, any one of us could be in a position of conflict of interest and not even know. So that's what concerns me. It concerns me, number one, that we're vulnerable and we are at risk. And it concerns me that you could be guilty but not even know you're guilty because you walked into a situation. If you're 5 minutes late for a meeting and something was added to the agenda, you could walk in, sit down, and not realize that you're in a conflict of interest situation. So I think it's absolutely essential, as Councillor Sato has said, that we do have coverage. Otherwise, who is going to want to do this job? I mean, most people don't want to do this job anyway. I mean, who in their right mind wants to do this job? Really, you know?
They want it.
Think about it. Who wants to do it?
They want it, they think it's easy.
No, when you look at the general population, I have people tell me all the time, I could never do your job. It's impossible. So we have to ensure that we do have the protection. And I think for our future, we want to ensure that being an elected official is something that people feel proud of and that people are not afraid to venture down that road because of liability and risk and everything else. So, I mean, we're supposed to be the ordinary Joe on the street representing the community. We're not expected to be, with all due respect, lawyers or engineers or anything else. We're just supposed to be individuals who are representative of the public that come forward and do our absolute best to make sure that the community is well represented. And I believe Mayor McCallion, she does that, and she absolutely deserves to be looked after in this instance. But I think all members of council should have that same opportunity. So Councillor Sato, if you want to refer it, you can refer it, but I think you may find that you have the support today to put Mayor McCallion's mind at ease and also to ask staff to come back with more information about the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Fennell?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly support the intent of where we're going, and I certainly support what Councillor Sato has put on the floor. Just for some modest clarification, I think it's very important that we note Mayor McCallion was found not guilty of a conflict of interest, and there's a little bit of dialogue around here that, you know, had Brampton not, she wouldn't have been surprised. Hazel McCallion is never surprised. The motion that Brampton Council walked onto their own agenda in 2007 was to meet a tight deadline for the regional bylaws. It was properly moved and seconded at the City of Brampton in 2007 on September 12th. It was part of the motion, then went in consent, properly moved and seconded, and it was a draft resolution to the Regional Development Charges Bylaw, a law of general application, that it was to be sent over to the region. It was put on the consent agenda, added on the council agenda, and sent here the next day. The clerk prepared the motion. I signed it, Mayor McCallion signed it, and it was found not guilty. Whether it had been here 2 weeks ahead, 5 months ahead, there was no conflict of interest. That was the finding. I just want to be clear about that because there's a series of actions that, in fact, just last September, we did the same thing at Brampton Council table. Same councillors moved the motion on the renewal of our development charge bylaw for our central commercial area be different, and then it was to be sent to the region appeal. Same thing. We do it every 5 years. It's how we do business. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear that it's the business that the city does with the region appeal, and it was a not guilty finding. Thank you.
Councillor Crombie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'd like to speak a little bit about a personal experience, and that was after the by-election. I, too, was facing spurious, baseless, politically motivated allegations, twice taken to Election Finance Committee, twice on the Ontario Appeals Court, and then a judicial review was called for. I faced $50,000 in legal fees and never even entered a courtroom, and no one ever charged me. So it's very easy to see how quickly your legal bills can escalate in this very litigious environment. So just want to recap a little bit too. We know the judges agreed that the litigation was politically motivated. It did not arise from a bona fide concern for the public interest. The conclusion was inescapable that the action was more about tarnishing our mayor's legacy and her reputation than about municipal law. The mayor was awarded damages of $170,000, and the applicant refused to pay. He says he's impecunious, unable, whatever. Once again, the court found that the mayor did not have a conflict of interest, notwithstanding that, yes, the application was out of time, but she did not have a conflict of interest. And this is very important. If any of us worked in a corporation today and we were directors or officers of that corporation, we would be fully indemnified, absolutely, completely, 100%, if we were found not guilty. And such should be the case for all of us as regional councillors. So what I'm proposing is perhaps there's a flaw in our policy here. Certainly we understand that there is indemnification available to us up to an amount of $100,000. I'm suggesting that that's not nearly enough, and we should be rendered whole should we be found innocent in any hearing, in any trial. If that's only fair, that would be with the same rule that would be extended to us, same coverage that would be extended to us, the same indemnification that would be extended to us should we be officers or directors of a board of directors in a corporation. And I don't see why it should be any different. I don't see why the rules should be any different for us as regional councillors. So perhaps we need a policy modification. And perhaps that should be the first step here, that we are rendered fully whole, that the policy be modified, and then we can entertain Councillor Sato's motion, which I intend to support in any case. And I think that bylaw 38-2005 should include all allegations, including Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. I think bottom line is that if we're found not guilty, as Mayor McCallion was, we should be rendered whole, and we should be fully indemnified as any director or officer would be in any other corporation in a similar circumstance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Palashi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I did have a discussion with Councillor Sato out back and about the issue at the City of Brampton and the policies of the city. And I don't believe, Pat, you could check, Patrick, I don't think we have a dollar maximum amount at the City of Brampton. When I had talked to Pat, and that was the reason I was saying that there is a policy. I went through one 20 years ago, Project 80, if some of the ones that are around remember that witch hunt that went on throughout the two regions. The former mayor, Peter Robertson, and accusations were made, and we didn't get to the court system, but we certainly had to hire legal counsel to represent us in the Project 80 investigation. And when we were found that it was absolutely false, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, frivolous, the accusation. And I'm speaking in my case, and that I'm not going to speak for anybody else's cases, but Peter was the same, and we were both found that it had no merit, and so we had legal fees, and we were told by the city that if you have legal fees and you're dealing with that on accusations and you're found not to be guilty or not even charged, because the investigation actually cost you my money, cost my business money, and that the city paid. And I went forward with my bills, and absolutely, there was no question that the city paid those bills. And I truly believe that it's the same situation here. I agree with the previous speakers. It's a tough job to do. We all do it, though, knowing that. But then there are issues that come up. And when things that you're charged with and you're found not to be guilty or doesn't even get that far, and there are costs incurred in doing that job, then I fully agree that it should be reimbursed. I also agree, and I said to Pat, that the issue is that we need a proper policy here at the region, and that to deal with that. And I don't think there should be a dollar cap put on that. The policy should be that whatever the charges are, if you're found innocent, then you should be, as you say, found fully whole in what the costs that you incurred in doing your job. You're absolutely right. Corporations do it. I thought in the case of City Brampton, I think it's under our policies and insurance, and whatever the limit is they do, then the city would pick up the balance type of thing. And so I absolutely believe that there should be a policy, and I fully support the reimbursement of the cost for the mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Morrison.
Okay, thank you, Chair Kolb. I was more than willing to second Councillor Sato's motion, and I will second this motion. As Councillor Palashi has spoken and Councillor Crombie about having some personal experiences, I'm sure everybody around the table knows the wonderful experiences that I've had over the last 7 years. And I do believe that you cannot be held to pay those amounts, because that's what those people are trying to do to you. They're trying to bankrupt you, or they're trying to make you suffer within your family and your personal life. So I totally support the approach that Councillor Sato is taking and where we're going with this. I believe that there should always be some sort, if you are not guilty, there should always be some sort of indemnification for the politician. And let me tell you, folks, around this table, it could happen to any single one of you at any time. I agree that with Councillor Miles that the way the vindictiveness of some of the residents, and it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like poison spreading throughout the community. And what a shame, what a shame. And Mayor McCallion has served this region, has served her community of Mississauga and this region for over 40 years. And she has done an outstanding job. And I have absolutely no problem with supporting her in this. I will say, much to my chagrin, I'll be in Ottawa at the next council meeting on municipal business, so I'm afraid I won't even be here at the table, but I think the approach Councillor Sato is taking, I would expect almost everyone around this table would support that. I certainly would if I would be here. Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. It's been a very interesting discussion, and I'm always reminded of how hard it is to do new policy on the fly, and that when you're presented with a conundrum like this, to try to do the right thing, to indemnify someone who was, wrongly accused, and at the same time come up with a method that will protect the public interest, which includes the ability of citizens to bring forward legitimate complaints, and that they have a way to feel confident that the court system will hear their case and be able to do it without costing them their house as well, because not all politicians are innocent all the time. So bearing that in mind, to come up with a policy that will cover us off for all the reasonable expenses and maybe some sort of case management, because, if we think we have unlimited funding, we might avail ourselves of it and just grind out, very high legal bills as well. So I'm very concerned at that I don't necessarily think there's a cap, because seeing bills from lawyers at City Hall and everywhere, I'm astounded at what it costs for legal representation. Certainly $100,000 is probably a will and a cup of coffee with the average lawyer these days. But there has to be a balance with that public interest, and that's the part. I'm not necessarily talking about this case, but in general, to provide an opportunity for the public to bring forward a legitimate case, and there have been some without naming any. I myself won a case similar to this 20 years ago. It cost me $100,000, and the person that I was involved with went bankrupt, and it was the same story. So I'm familiar, except they didn't have a program back then. The program was work longer hours and pay the lawyer off, though. I'm familiar with that program. So it's hard to do this on the fly. Like one of the beautiful things about lawyers as well that I love is they've got 3 different kinds of billing going on at the same time. So you've got the retail and then the wholesale you provided to the judge, and then the judge whittled it down to 170. So unlike other businesses, it's a bit of a moving target. So I'm a little concerned about that we didn't get the best customer price here. So that part with dealing with public money, I bear that in mind. But that's something we can think about over the next couple weeks. But definitely leaving this where it stands for any one of us, we're sitting ducks at that kind of a level of support from insurance and from I guess from the general taxpayer. I'm wondering too, when we're talking about corporations covering us unlimited fashion, they probably provide the lawyers as well. So we're free to do whatever we want. So as far as hiring someone, so if we're going to raise the cap, then I'm assuming we're going to need some policy governing, how it's not just handed out to. Just give us the bill at the end, we'll cover the tab. So it's a substantial amount of money we could be talking about over the next few years. So I support the deferral because I don't know how you're going to hammer it, even the beginning of that out in the next week or two, but I'm willing to hear all the arguments on both sides. So those are my comments for the time being, and I look forward to seeing this resolved properly. Thank you.
Councilor Yanico.
Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful for the discussion, and I'm grateful for the approach because in all candor, I most assuredly could not have supported the motion today if it was to indemnify. And my rationale is very simple. I can read the English language, and I can read our policy, the one that was just minted a few months ago, and it says the cap is $100,000. There may be all sorts of reasons why it shouldn't be, and I get that. And I think what we're saying is let's have some of those reasons. But to the point that's being made, notwithstanding some of the revisionism, the policy itself says, and some of you are belaboring it, was found innocent. This is what your policy says. The coverage applies to both guilty and non-guilty outcomes. I'll repeat that. The coverage applies to both guilty and non-guilty outcomes. So you can spend all the time, innocent doesn't matter according to your policy, apparently. I don't know if some of you are aware of that. Maybe you want to revise that, but be that as it may. The fundamental point that I'm making is it's very, very clear that the limit of the coverage was increased at the time of the region's annual insurance renewal from $50,000 to the then maximum coverage available from the region's insurance provider of $100,000 effective July 1, 2013. That's the last time we turned our minds to this. It isn't a year. So if one of my constituents is reading this, assuming they can read, they say, Nando, how did you hand over a $500,000 check? Well, I can't read, or there's something else going on. And what this report doesn't do, and I don't think it can, and I think, Bonnie, you're right, you've got to bridge the gap to say, because I've never been in this situation, hope I never will be, but I have to agree, I don't think $100,000 gets you much in the modern era. What we have is relative to a policy, the practical application of how it played out. And this is the real world, and these are the numbers involved. And I think it's clear there's a disconnect, but that has to be explained and documented so that we can rationalize and revisit the policy. The final point that I will leave you with, and you may disagree, but I'm going to give you an apples to apples, not an apples to oranges. As an apples to apples, the Canadian dollar's gone down dramatically. One of you goes on a conference and says my $60 per diem just doesn't get it done. That pays for breakfast in Tokyo, so I spent $300 a day in my per diem. Mr. Chairman, I don't think you'd hand over the $300 per day check. You'd say, oh, hold on, it's 60. Oh, yes, but you'd say, no, I don't care what if you want to revise the policy, bring that back and say, 60 Canadian dollars doesn't get it done. We wouldn't just say, well, but in fairness, he's got the chits, so let's just give him $300. You can't. And it may be 60 is inappropriate. It's the exact same principle that applies, and I agree fundamentally the policy is inappropriate. So bring that back and say, and as an example, here's one, and isn't this the right thing to do? And under those circumstances, I can explain it to my constituents and may find favor with the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mullen.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. First and foremost, I guess, to open, how sad I mean, how sad that we're even dealing with this. And to you, Diane, thank you so much for coming today. For those around that do not know who you are, you have been certainly a major community volunteer in the city of Mississauga for many years, and it's very appreciative that you would come forward as a resident and as being so well known to come and speak on behalf of the mayor. So thank you. And I think thank you to Councillor Sadel for bringing forward the motion. I agree, and I think that you said it so well, Councillor Miles. To put yourself in this position has to be absolutely devastating. And to have the risk of losing your home after 40 years of service is just unacceptable. It's appalling. It's incredible. So I agree. To put yourself in the position that she is in today, and for some of you who have already been through it, Councillor Crombie and Mayor Morrison, I know what Mayor Morrison has gone through, and it just takes everything out of you, and yet you're still trying to do the job. What Mayor McCallion did that day was try to benefit the requests from Brampton and from Mayor Morrison, from Caledon as well. Certainly, a process is important, and I think that's what we're talking about here today. So I am going to support Councillor Sado's motion. I think it's appropriate. Let us get it back here at the next council meeting, because I don't think Mayor McCallion should have to go through any more in terms of what she has gone through in terms of this ordeal. So I'm fully supportive.
Hey, could I have the motion on the board, please? I can read what I have. Is that what's going to be? All right, there it is. Everybody had time to read it? Okay. You have a question on it? Yes.
The question is, why are we limiting it to the municipal conflict of interest?
Councillor Sado.
Thank you. It's relating it to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act because that's what bylaw 38-2005 relates to. And that is what the insurance under item 4, conflict of interest reimbursement, is specific. The insurance that Councillor Yanika was referring to was not the conflict of interest insurance. Conflict of interest insurance does not cover, it doesn't relate to guilty, not guilty. It's a different insurance. So specifically, we are covered under the other policies for example, the Ontario statutes, and Patrick can explain that. The amounts that we are covered for, certainly in the report that comes back, can be extended or can be looked at being extended. But in this case, it is the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act that is the only one that is under council's discretion to pay the fees for. So that's why this is relating specifically to that.
Okay, Mayor Morrison.
I was just going to say, having had some experience in this, that the insurance companies for, I would assume the region, but the municipalities will determine whether you can be covered under their policies or not, but not for conflict of interest. It's all the other things that you do, because when I was sued by a developer, it was not a conflict of interest lawsuit. It was a suit for some other stuff. And I was covered under under the legal for the insurance coverage for the town of Caledon, and had legal on that side. So.
Councillor Carlson.
Not to belabor, but if we could take it as direction that you would look at the nuances of the guilty, criminal, because, you know, I don't want to explain why we paid $1 million for somebody guilty of fraud or something. You know, that's one thing that comes to my mind. And secondly, any other related issues. I'm sure you know the business and what's going on in Ontario, so this is a good start. But I don't know whether we can do all this by next week or 2 weeks, but a picture of how we can protect ourselves reasonably in all aspects, whether it's civil, conflict of interest, or criminal, and that we're not seen to be circling the wagons for every illegal eventuality for criminal, non-criminal, et cetera. So, I don't want to put the needle at the other end of the gauge here either. So I think there's got to be a little fear of something to the average politician. Otherwise, so I don't know. I just saw that as direction because I'm sure you have associations that deal with this stuff, and whatever.
Solicitor Patrick, do you want to speak to that?
I wanted to say that I'm in support.
No, are you the solicitor now?
Oh, sorry, I thought you.
A good one. Looks like a judge.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to offer the comfort, if you will, that there is broad existing coverage under the policy that is the subject of the report on the agenda today. The difficulty is that policy, as it's currently written, carves out municipal conflict of interest. And instead of making it an entitlement to claim indemnity, it affords council a discretionary decision in a municipal conflict of interest case. And that's the discretion that is being asked of you now. So there is a broad coverage for these other non-municipal conflict of interest act type exposures that you can rely on the bylaw for. The second thing is I'd just like to emphasize that in addition to the bylaw itself, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, a provincial statute, does provide council with this discretion to afford coverage in an appropriate case. So that's a separate legal foundation for what you're being asked to do.
Are you happy with that, Oscar? Okay. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I'm in support of the motion, and I appreciate the philosophy behind it of getting a little bit more information, of clarifying that we take away that discretion in an omnibus sort of way, because it's an election year, and inadvertently, if we were to deny this or be in a position to deny this, we are dissuading people from coming forward to run for election. I think Gail made a good point about how crazy we all are. And people tell me that all the time. I mean, it's one of the, I would never do your job. So I think it's important that we give everyone out there the feeling of safety that you can do this job. If you're doing it conscientiously, you won't be ruined.
Okay. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, and I'm going to support Councillor Sato's resolution, but I have a request through to legal. When you draft the report, could you please put it in layman's terms? I understand you like to write things in all these legalese, and it's important, I guess, for the public record, but honestly, I would respectfully ask that it be put in layman's terms, and if appropriate, could you please do a staff report? You've given us information today that outlines things, or I'm sorry, not a staff report, a presentation, a brief presentation, so that we see it there, but not just us, but anybody who is watching council, because we're now televised, will be able to see and understand. And it's not just trying to connect dots between comments made around this table and a report that's sitting in front of us. So I think a presentation in this case would be most appropriate. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sato, last speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask for, because Patrick came over, and the next council meeting is on February 27th. And I realize that this is a tight timeline. However, the one after that is not until March 27th. Because of March break. And quite honestly, I think we need to deal with this issue as it regards the indemnification of the mayor's costs sooner rather than later. And to leave it to March 27th is putting it off for, almost a full month. And I just don't think that's fair to do. So his concern was that the timelines to getting the report to clerks, the agenda timelines were going to be difficult for him. So I would ask for some discretion and leeway in the clerk's side and David, the CAO side, to allow that report to come on February 27th, because I do think it's very important. The report can be written, but it's getting it into the clerk to meet those deadlines is in 2 weeks is going to be tough. So if you could help out, that would be.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, we can certainly change the internal processes. The concern I always have is that we don't get the reports to members of council soon enough so that you can make an informed decision. So what it probably means is the report itself won't come to you until probably the 25th, just 2 days before the meeting.
Well, I think that's fine.
If that's okay with you, then we can do that.
I think that's fine. And Mr. Chairman, I would ask for a recorded vote, please, on the motion.
Yeah, just one point. Because we've never funded for this, I believe that what we would do as staff is look at 38-2005, and we would have to allow ourselves to take that money out of reserves in order to be able to do that. If that was just a small thing to give staff a bit of an advantage of where the money would come from, and then you don't have another concern when we come back. Okay? Councillor Mullen.
I was just going to call the question in a recorded vote.
Okay. Okay. All those that are in favor, will you please stand? Is this motion on the table here?
All those in favor, Councillor Carlson, Councillor Crombie, Councillor Dale, Mayor Fennell, Councillor Foley, Councillor Fonseca, Councillor Hames, Councillor Ionica, Councillor McFadden, Councillor Miles, Councillor Moore, Mayor Morrison, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Palashi, Councillor Paderak, Councillor Sato, Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Spovieri, Councillor Starr, Councillor Thompson, and Councillor Whitehead. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Could I have two motions, both appreciation of both candidates to be here today for the presentation? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, moving on then to the agenda. Now we have an agenda. So we're into proclamation. There's one proclamation. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Okay, Palashi and Sanderson, that the February 22nd, 2014 be proclaimed as Regeneration Outreach Community Coldest Night in the Years in support of the hunger and the homeless in the region of Peel. All those in favor? Opposed, anybody? Motion's carried. Moving on then to management, we've dealt with item MA1. I'll move that over to Councillor Whitehead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
We're on MA2.
Yep. MAA2 is the report of the Regional Accessibility Committee. It's here for information. No speakers. Could I have a motion? Councillor Palashi, seconder Councillor Fonseca. All those in favor? It carries. 3 is the report of the Green Island Securement Committee. Again, it's here for information. Moved by Councillor
Mr. Chairman,
Thompson.
I'm going to ask for that to be deferred to the next meeting. I've asked I was given some new information and I haven't received a response to that. So I'm going to ask for that to be moved to the next regional council meeting.
Okay. I have a motion of referral to the next meeting. All those in favor? It carries. Under communications, the first item, if I can just say, there's another letter similar to this that's already been dealt with and answered. This is the next letter, which is why it's on the agenda today. It's exactly the same issue, and the region's response would be the same. So just for that piece of information, there are 3 items of communication. We're going to have a motion on all 3. Councillor Mullen, seconder over on this side, Councillor McFadden. All those in favor, it carries. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, moving on then to Public Works, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. PWA1 on the report on the public meeting on the North Hill, moved by Councillor Whitehead, second by Councillor Paderak. All in favor? Carried. Next is the transportation smart commute recognition. We've already done that, but did we move that? So it's all done?
Yeah.
And the GTS West Corridor was done as well, correct? So we'll move on to Water, PWC 1. Water main replacements, Councillor Starr.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to meet with you this morning and suggest, Dan, that I had some questions on the type of the submission bids, et cetera. And I'd like to have this deferred to the next meeting. It's only 2 weeks, and nothing's going to happen for paving in the next little while anyway. So rather than go through your chart and everything else, I'd like to have that deferred. No problem? Okay, so I'll meet maybe even out today if we can, or in the next couple of days. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got that referred back, moved by Councillor Starr, second by Councillor Sanderson. All in favor? Carried. Communications, I think we just have the two, which we do. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Fonseca. And the additional one, right, yeah, on the agenda. So we have three altogether. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Pleshy, sorry.
Hasselbrock.
No, that's a different one.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Everybody had voted in favor of it, so I'm done. So back to you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and
Moving on to health then, Councillor Moore.
It was Castlebrooke.
sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, the GTA West Corridor Environmental Assessment. I know we dealt with that with MMM and the MTO, but we never dealt with this.
Well, yeah.
And I'd like to talk to this, speak to it if I could.
Could we do that one
If I'm
separately?
allowed?
Yeah, it was included in the agenda as an added item. So so it would be appropriate to deal with it now.
So what we'll do is we'll move the first two through, and now we'll bring this one on. Is that okay,
Yeah,
Councillor?
that's great, yep. So I can speak to it now? Okay,
Absolutely,
thanks.
yep.
I just want the regional council to be aware of this. This is a group that's conflicting with the city of Brampton in the process that we're going through. So, and I know that they are dealing with MTO, and that MTO is coming to the city of Brampton and saying, well, what's going on here? And of course, the city of Brampton saying, no, we're not. What they want to do, this group, is they want to create another GO station in the Northwest Brampton, and we have one at Mount Pleasant, and GO has said absolutely not. They don't have the funding to build another one. The ministry has said that's not our intention, but these people are saying that they're having really great discussions with the ministry on this issue. But then the ministry's coming to us and saying, no, we're not. So I really have difficulty in I'm not going to say they don't have a right to speak. They absolutely do. And they have a right to, and I believe they have met with regional staff on these issues also. But I think regional staff is of the same with the municipality of Brampton, that we have a position we're going forward in the case of Northwest Brampton. This is a single Northwest Brampton landowner who says they represent a number of people. We had a seminar or a meeting here, Region was there and everything, and they stood up, and we went to the developers they said they represent, and the developer said absolutely not, they don't represent us. So that's, I really, it's unfortunate that this comes in, sometimes you gotta take some stuff with a grain of salt, I guess, and I don't wanna say too much that I'm gonna end up coming back saying, will you reimburse me for my legal fees, because these guys are coming
So
up.
are you asking us, if I may then,
Well, I guess the difficulty I have is, you know, I believe they say they're gonna continue meeting with regional staff, and that's fine to do that.
why don't we get them to bring a report to the next meeting?
I absolutely, I would appreciate that. That's great, that suggestion, so that at least Region and Brampton is on the same side in dealing with these issues.
Yep.
And not somebody coming out saying, well, no, this is the better way, you know, so, all right, thanks.
So we'll send that back, and
Yeah, if you can.
You want to move that, Councillor Pleshy, and
I'll refer this letter to staff
Yep.
to come back on our,
sure, and we'll second that by
not a
Councillor.
lengthy report, but.
We'll second that by Councillor Morrison. Councillor Crombie.
Mr. Chairman, when you're finished with this item, I just want to go back a step and on the previous motion. when you're finished with this item.
Okay. Okay, so let's vote in favor of this. We'll move it forward. Okay, and I did have one other one, the one I was, sorry, Councillor Pelletier, I thought it was PW5, but the reason why I said lump it together because it was being deferred back by Councillor Starr. That was the one I had mistaken, so I apologize for that. Is that what you wanted to talk about, Councillor Crombie?
I
PWD5?
wasn't sure if Councillor Starr realized he was speaking on a project based in Ward 5, because I've dealt with staff on this issue, and I'm quite satisfied that they have undertaken a thorough review.
Well, as Vice Chair of Public Works, it's been my duty over the past 3 years to take a look at all of these. And this morning I wasn't able to come in and preview this as I usually try to do. And I just wanted
Councillor
to take
Starr,
a
I
quick...
think we've had your binder for over a week. Maybe you had an opportunity to speak to staff ahead of today.
I've asked for a deferral so I can speak
Fine.
because paving isn't going to be starting until sometimes probably
I don't want to
in
delay
the
the project,
springtime
Councillor
anyway.
Starr.
That's the usual engineering practice in this day and age.
I don't want to delay the project. Are we satisfied that the project won't be delayed if we defer it to the next meeting?
Yes, that was asked and staff said it was okay. So that's why we decided to do that.
If I could just clarify, Mr. Chairman, this is a water main replacement project. It's not a pavement, although there'll be restoration at the end, but it's getting into the ground to do the water main replacement. They wouldn't be mobilizing in the next week or two, but it takes a while to get the paperwork done and mobilize the troops. So a week or two is not a big issue.
So I think just on the timing of the project, it's not going to delay anything.
It's not going to delay the project.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay. So we'll delay that. So just on the record, I assumed this was to be dealt with, so I think we've moved it, so we'll just leave it as it is. Okay, back to you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for the confusion.
Moving then on to health, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of council, before you, the first item on the agenda is the overview of the Provincial Health Links Initiative. It's here for information. It's been moved by Councillor McFadden, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. Seeing no questions, all those in favor? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is the report of the Aging Population Term of Council Steering Committee. It's moved by Mayor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Pelletier. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is an information report on the increased occurrences of Legionnaire's disease in the region of Peel. It's been moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor Yanika. Seeing no question, all those in favor? That's carried. The next is an update information report on the Healthy Smiles Ontario program, moved by Councillor Dale, seconded by Councillor Paderak. All those in favor? That's carried. The next is HEB 3. It's an update report on the Peel Outdoor Smoking Bylaw implementation. Councillor Paderak.
Yes, could you or staff tell us if there are any outstanding issues that have occurred as a result of this?
Through you, Madam Chair. There is an outstanding issue that Councillor had asked previously about the issue of students smoking round about high schools, and there'd been complaints from residents about this. We have looked into this. Currently, the Municipal Act provides for councils to pass bylaws regulating smoking, but it very specifically states that they cannot apply to highways, meaning the road allowance. Any street, the bylaw does not apply to those, and that includes the sidewalks. So there is no provision for regulating that, and if the students are hanging around on the sidewalk outside the school, that wouldn't be covered. However, the proposed amendments to the Smoke Free Ontario Act would have some effect. There's no way, as I understand it, to regulate students who are standing on private property smoking through this bylaw mechanism or through the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, but the new provisions would set up an area of 20 meters from any of what's classified as recreational facilities. That would include playgrounds, sports fields that are around a school, so that would then reduce the availability of places they could smoke in those circumstances. So there has been a slight improvement with these proposed amendments to the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, but it's not the complete control of smoking around high schools that some people would like to see.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Paderak, any further questions?
No, thank you.
So then to the doctor, does your update constitute closure to that outstanding item? Thank you.
I believe so, Madam
Great,
Chair.
thanks. It's been moved by Councillor Paderak, seconded by Councillor Fonseca. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And the last is an information item. It's a letter or a communication from Ronnie Gavsey from the Trillium Gift of Life. It's here for receipt. Moved by Councillor Hames, seconded by Mayor Morrison. All in favor? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you.
Moving on then to bylaws, down to other business. We have two items. Mayor McKellen, you had asked for an item, and I did put you on here. You wanted to speak to...
New business? Are you
yeah.
at new business?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, there's an article that appeared in the Toronto Star that concerns me regarding the unfortunate situation that Mayor Morrison went through. I think I went through a lot, but what Mayor Morrison went through is far more serious. She had police protection. She had her husband beat up in the driveway. I mean, and she had somebody that was interfering with her income tax. I'm sure that my income tax have all been looked at very carefully, and etc. But it's certainly a situation. But what concerns me is the headline, and not the headline, but it says, Jeffrey Granger admitted to helping Peel developers evade taxes, framing Caledon mayor. Now that condemns all developers in Peel, because we don't know who the developers were that were involved. Now, I think it's essential. When I think of the development in Mississauga in the last 40 years, that I can tell you of all the developers that made a major contribution, I mean, developed the city, actually, their reputation is being affected by this comment because they're Peel. I think of Harold Shipp. I think of Erin Mills Development, Cadillac Fairview, Markborough, Orlando, and all those wonderful people that have developed our city and done it with credibility and everything. And the same has happened in Brampton, happening and in Caledon. And to think that maybe, I don't know, we don't know, it just says Peel developers. That's a lot of people, a lot of developers. And as I say, with what Mayor Morrison went through, I don't know of any politician in the 46 years I've been in politics that has been faced with what she was faced with. I mean, that to me, police protection for a couple of years. Think about it, folks. Think about it. Think seriously about it. I would never dream. And I read this article, and it says, admitted to helping Peel developers. Now, those are developers, I'm sure, that look after Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, if they're Peel. So I think it's essential. I mean, the court must know who the developers are, if it's one, if it's two, or whatever it is. And I think we should know who the developers were that he helped to frame Mayor Morrison. I think it's very, very important. And this article was in the Star, and it's very obvious. So, Mr. Chairman, I think our legal department of the Region Appeal should research the court or be in touch with the police, which I think is OPP, and that we find out who the developers were that he helped that do work in the Region Appeal to help frame and especially framing Mayor Morrison. I think it's absolutely essential that we know, so that we know who we're dealing with. I mean, I'm leaving at the end of the year, but politicians that are going to follow, I think, should know who the developers are, if whatever number it is, and there's no information. It just says Peel Developers. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move a motion that we request the legal department of the Region Appeal to research the names of the developers that this gentleman was guilty of admitting doing what they did, whatever that was, well, it was to frame and that it come back to regional council. But I think we should all say to Mayor Morrison, think of what she went through for the last 2 years. You think what I might have gone through, but here is police protection, her husband beat up in the driveway. I mean, think about it. Think about it, folks, how serious it is. Far more serious than any Conflict of Interest Act. This is serious, that this can happen in society today. And so I would put that motion.
I think that's good.
That our legal department research and determine what information they can provide that would be presented to the Region Appeal so that we are aware of the developers in the appeal, because that's what the article says. Doesn't say that all articles are correct. I'm just telling you that's what the article said.
Hey, I do have a seconder. Is there any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Mullen.
Yeah, I'll be very happy to support the motion.
have
My
it.
understanding is that you can get the transcripts. They are available. So I think that this is important. I mean, you're absolutely right, Mayor McCallion. What Mayor Morrison has gone through and her family, I mean, none of us could possibly, I don't know how she's managed to deal with what she's done. Comes to this council meeting, speaks against issues that she knows that are going to be harmful to her. Her husband today is in the audience, by the way, and what he went through, he deserves a clap. Anyway, I'll be happy to second the motion.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor? Opposed, anybody? Motion is carried. There's one other item of business, which is a request from the Sheridan president to...
Oh, one more item, Mr. Chairman, one other item. The Region Appeal has supported the works function that's happening. And we've been asked to do it. I think Brampton's been asked to do it, and Caledon's been asked to do it. And the Region Appeal has taken the goal of sponsorship. Could we know exactly what part does Caledon, Brampton, and Mississauga play in the fact that the region has pledged $15,000 to support it? We had a motion yesterday at council that we would support it only by $5,000, but I asked it be deferred, and council agreed that it be deferred until we find out exactly why Brampton, Caledon, Mississauga can't be a part of that $15,000 that the Region Appeal is sponsoring, because it's the Region Appeal.
Dan, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can try, Mr. Chairman, through you. Actually, you had the opportunity earlier with Joe Johnson, the president of the OPWA, was here. My council may recall, a lot of reports come through here, but I brought that report to this council 3 years ago to get your support and direction. The issue is it's really Peel as a member, and it's a separate membership than Mississauga, Brampton, whatever. And so that when we brought it forward, that's why I brought it forward to council, saying it's extraordinary. What would you like to do? Support it at whatever level? Council supported it at the 15, but the OPWA wouldn't see Brampton and Caledon, Mississauga being part of that.
Oh, they do?
They
Yeah.
don't.
So they don't?
They see you as everybody, every municipality is a separate
Okay,
member.
So are you telling me that
I can follow that up with the OPWA.
Yeah, it means that the people from Mississauga, Caledon, and Brampton can't participate in many of the things that the 15,000 gives, VIP reception rooms and you name it. It's a long list. Are you saying that only the staff at the region can participate in that? I think you
yeah.
should look at what the conditions of the sponsorship is.
But at the,
It's a long list, so I would suggest it be referred to the next meeting, that you come forward. I think council better be aware of the 15,000 gives the region appeal all kinds of opportunities that the 5,000 that we sponsored does not give the city of Mississauga. And I'm sure it doesn't give Brampton or Caledon.
okay,
I can bring the copy of the report back and a little bit more flush out the details. My understanding is it's not that big a deal. It's really more about providing sponsorship to enable the Congress to happen in Toronto.
No, it's 5 to 6 privileges.
Wow, okay.
If you could bring it back, I don't want to
okay.
spend
All
time
right.
on it
The
today.
staff will take that as direction then?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you could.
I want to deal with this one first, which I had started on, which it was about the Sheridan College. And they wanted to come and make a presentation, but it's asking us really, is the region prepared to endorse the Sheridan College plan to become an Ontario upgraded professional university? Direction is required. So, okay. Everybody understand it? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Then Councillor Whitehead? Oh, Councillor Sanderson?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to know, we didn't have our stretch this morning, and I know we're going into lunch here in a few minutes, but I was just wondering if everybody would be able to stand up and we sing happy birthday to Hazel while we're still on the...
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, she's 39.
39.
She's reversing.
Well, we do have a cake, so where's the cake? We might as well have the candle.
It's out the back.
So, well, let's bring it in and light it. Sure. I'll ask, let me finish off the agenda and then we'll do that. Hey to you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Hazel. Happy birthday to you. How old are you? Okay, Councillor Starr.
I just needed clarification on that, on the
Better blow out the candle. You get a picture.
Can we take a picture together, Hazel? All of us together?
Okay,
Can we take a picture?
Wait till the
With the
cake
cake?
gets. Okay. Councillor Starr, you had.
I want a clarification on the Sheridan College, where they're asking for support to become, is that all of the Sheridan campuses? Was that?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to that. The actual request is to allow Sheridan College to come forward to the next council meeting as a delegation. And the delegation will be to ask council's support for their request to become a degree granting institution. So at that point, when they come forward as a delegation, council will have the opportunity to ask those questions and get answers. So all we're approving today is their request to be a delegation.
Well, okay, that's why I needed clarification, because when I was talking to the president of the Mississauga, or not he's of it all, but when he was talking about Mississauga, he said he was coming forward. So I wasn't sure if this was, anyway, you clarified it. Thank you.
Okay, the one in camera item was the session of the Greenland Security Subcommittee, which I asked for that item to be deferred to the next meeting for more information. Can I have a mover and seconder for that? All those in favor carried. I have a motion by Dale and Crombie that the bylaw to confirm the procedures of Regional Council, a short reading, be approved. All those in favor of that? Carried. And then I have a motion to adjourn by Fonseca and Haynes. All those in favor to Fonseca and Haynes. All those in favor of that? Carried. Thank you very much, and thank you for your great confirmation.
Chris, change of driver's license.
The second one was the policy does not allow.
Come on, Richard, are you coming out for your picture?
ਫਿਰ ਸਹੀ
ਨਹੀਂ ਆਰਗਨ ਡੋਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਕੱਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਡਰਾਈਵਿੰਗ ਲਾਇਸੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਰਟੀਫਿਕੇਟ
ਜੀ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਾਈਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਭੇਜ ਦਿਓ
ਜੀ
ਯੂ ਡੋਨਟ ਹੈਵ ਟੂ ਗੋ ਸਮਵੇਅਰ
ਐਬਸੋਲੂਟਲੀ ਦੇ ਮੇਕ ਅ ਲੋਟ ਆਫ ਇਨੀਸ਼ੀਏਟਿਵ
ਬੈ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਨਲਾਈਨ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਹੋਰ ਰੇਜ਼ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਨੈਗੇਟਿਵਿਟੀ ਔਰ ਪੋਜ਼ਿਟਿਵਿਟੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ
ਨਹੀਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਹਾਲੇ ਵੀ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਸੁਣਨ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਕਈ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨਸ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਪੁੱਛ ਲਵਾਂ ਸਵਾਲ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਮਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ 6 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਆ ਪਰਮਾਤਮਾ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਡੋਨੇਟ ਕਰਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਔਰਗਨਸ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪਹੁੰਚਣ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਔਖਾ ਹੋ ਜਾਣਾ ਨਾ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪੈਸੇ ਲੱਗਣਗੇ ਡੋਨੇਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਵੀ ਰਜਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਹੋਣ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਸਪਲਾਂਟਸ ਦੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਹੋਣ ਤੇ ਕਈਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਫਿਊਨਰਲ ਦਾ ਖਰਚਾ ਬਚ ਜਾਵੇ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਇਟਸ ਨਾਟ ਦ ਕੇਸ ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੁਐਰੀਜ਼ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਐਂਡ ਵਹਿਮ ਭਰਮ ਬਿਗ ਵਨਸ
ਵਹਿਮ ਭਰਮ ਹੁਣ ਦੇਖੋ ਇੱਕ ਪਾਸੇ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ